Okay, hey guys, welcome back. This is Lucid. We're going to be doing a National Overview 2.0 here. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and just create a new pretender real quick. And that's so that we can see the National Overview kind of stuff. There's a few things I want to go over real quick. Um, where is Micklin here? So here's Micklin. There's some things I want to talk about. We don't have the Ocelotl that we can see, which is the other really key Micklin unit. um, there's also Blood Death Summons and Assassins and stuff that you can get that I didn't use at all this game that are really, really good. But the main thing, I think, is this is our Recruit Anywhere Sacred. And our Bless was kind of designed for him because luck triggers in both forms. And yeah, it's just all around pretty solid. He does have some critical weaknesses, and those weaknesses were not showing at the beginning of the game, but they definitely started to show towards the end of the game. So, what were those weaknesses? Well, one, I mean, if you look at him right now in this form, he's like a human pikeman. Like, he is not a good unit. Right? He's just an expensive sacred human pikeman with not even a very long pike. Like, bad protection, bad attack and defense, normal magic resistance. Now, we fix a lot of this with our Bless. Like, we end up having good, quickness, so his attack and defense aren't bad. Then we add attack skill, his attack becomes actually good. Blood Surge, it becomes even better. Strength becomes really good with Blood Surge, and then I think we had Strength of the Flesh too. So anyway, a lot of these stats end up getting fixed. But and that's kind of what Micklin is about, is it's taking a unit which in and of itself is kind of bad, and it's about making it serviceable and good. Not just serviceable, but good. But the thing is that there were still major weaknesses, because we didn't patch up all the holes. Like, we patched up the attack hole, we patched up the damage hole a little bit, we patched up the defense hole. We had fire resistance so that we set ourselves to later in the game patch up the protection hole a little bit. But like, we never patched up the magic resistance hole. And so we had a big hole with magic resistance. We also didn't have any magic weapons, so we had no way to deal with things like invulnerability and things like fog warriors. And some of those didn't really come out. We didn't see a single battle with fog warriors. I was going to do it, but I learned out afterwards that Wadestar was definitely preparing to be casting fog warriors from the very beginning. And he was probably set up to do it towards the end. So we were just getting to the point in the game where these guys would have started actually falling off, which is a little unfortunate. And a lot of that's because we don't have magic weapons and because we had bad MR. And these are things that don't really matter at the beginning of the game, but they can matter a ton at the end. So like the way you take advantage of being low MR is you can send thugs in to fight Jaguar warriors who have pretty good protection, but they also have something like Body Ethereal plus plus they have a Vine Shield or something, which is actually almost exactly what Ulm's vampires had. At the end, they caused me to lose that fight in Ulm. So there's other nations that could have done it, like Utgard could have done it too. They have Astral Mages, they have Thugs, so Utgard could have done Body Ethereal, put Vine Shields on Scrotty, and given them some kind of protection buff. And there's a very good chance they could do a just tremendous amount of damage to Jaguar warriors. In fact, that's probably how they should have tried to defend me. I did have flyers, so we can get them turn one. But if you're smart, you can not smart, but if you're clever, you can set up screens and stuff that will end up catching some of my flyers, so you can finish a buff cycle. And then if you just do that one time, and you're able to have that Scrotty fight a whole army of Sacreds. I mean, you can potentially kill like 200 Sacreds, right? So it's a huge, it's a really, really big hole. And that hole gets much, much smaller if you have magic weapons and you have a little bit better magic resistance. The other problem we talked about in my build was I didn't have enough order to recruit a lot of Jaguars. So I was probably missing out on like 50% of my Jaguar production by going Turmoil 3 versus like just neutral Turmoil. The problem of getting any scales with this nation is that you're not really very likely to have your Dominion in a lot of your provinces where you're going to be recruiting stuff. So that is a trade-off, and I can totally understand going Turmoil 3 and just getting whatever Jag production comes your way. Yeah, and that may be the best way to play it. I think you could do that, which is what I did. But it definitely comes at a mid-game price, because in the early mid-game, a lot of your forts are probably going to be in your Dominion. And if your forts are in your Dominion, because usually your forts are a little more core. They're, the way I like to build them anyway. Like, I think the edge fort is actually a little risky, where you just build on the edge of a border. Because it can be put under siege turn 1, and then it's basically you have units pinned in there while other people do other stuff. But if your edge provinces are one province away from a fort, then you can respond out from that fort and attack. Now, sometimes you'll want to do it that way, but point being, if you don't have all your forts on the edge provinces, you have them one province from the edge, your forts end up being a little more core, and they tend to kind of be more in your Dominion, even if a lot of your empire isn't. So in the mid-game, it is definitely going to affect your Jaguar production. So I think if you're trying to kind of balance all things out, in the late game, you don't really care about Jag production that much, because you're switching over to a mainly blood economy, like just blood and mages. And you're probably not even going to get a lot of your recruit anywhere troops. But in the mid-game, you're definitely going to want a lot of Jags. It's a bit of a trade-off. The other thing that's pretty important is, as you get Ozelotls, they are going to kind of want a different bless than Jaguars want. In the Ozelotls, they have a big HP pool. They don't necessarily care about... and actually, I'll show you how I made him. Let me just flash it up again so I remember what it is when I build him. Okay, I'm probably not going to remember all of it, but I'll remember enough. But because Ozelotls have a big HP pool, that luck only really triggers at the end, so it's not as great on Aussies. And the other things they definitely like, they love the killy part of the bless, because they have 3 attacks, they have high strength, so they do just a boatload of damage. And here we go. I think this is a better Pretender design, though, that I'm going to share here. Before, we had gone Oracle, because it's going to give us really high Astral and then a little bit of water. I don't think Frostfather's here, which would kind of be the other candidate for this. I think we're going to go with Smoking Mirror here, right? Which is pretty cheap. It's 90 things, or 90 gold, or 90 design points, and you get 3 paths, which is pretty freaking awesome. Plus, you get Fortune Teller 15 and Bringer of Fortune, which, if you're going to be dumpstering Misfortune, which I think in this build we will, then it's going to definitely be a boon. So anyway, this is the Pretender chassis we picked. Now I'm actually going to go back and we'll just watch this one. I'll talk through why I think this is an improvement. So there's a few things. Quickness, okay, so luck was huge for us. Having luck was such a big deal. It means when you have these sacreds that are all blessed up and they're doing a million damage a turn, there is no efficient way to kill them with luck on them. There just isn't. Like, you can't. You kind of can, right? If you're a nation with like huge amounts of free spawn, because these guys are glass cannons, they tend to die if they get surrounded. If you have a huge amount of free spawn or something like that, like, yeah, you can do it. If you're scales and you're able to just have a huge numbers advantage, like Olm almost had, you can kind of do it. If you're able to spam out huge amounts of swarm, it can help. There's ways you can kind of begin to deal with it, but not really. That luck just is so efficient. It's gonna be like when we're fighting Utgard and those giants were trying to kill us. Like, forget about it. Luck on a glass cannon trying to kill a giant is so good. Like on the Eagle Warriors, it basically quadruples their survivability because almost every hit that would have hit an Eagle Warrior would have killed it. The problem, though, is it begins to kind of fall off, just in the sense that eventually we're going to have the magic research where we could have cast it as a spell. Like, we could have done Battle Fortune on squads of Sacreds, or we could have done later in the game, which we didn't get to that point yet. And this game was on fast research, so if you're playing Mictlan, it would probably be more around turn 60 that you would probably get it, or maybe turn 55 or something. But you could have Will of the Fates up. You have good Astral Magic. You have Recruit Anywhere Astral Mages, so you can even do it with non-cap units. But yeah, if you're getting Will of the Fate up, or Will of Fates up, you can get it on everybody anyway. And you have Nature Mages who can potentially cast Swarm, so you can get that little combo going on too. So anyway, it's something you can cast on yourself. But it was super good. So I don't think, in no way do I think the build I did was like not viable. I think you can do it. You may want to not get hit quite as hard on Turmoil. So you can see with this one, that's the first thing I straightened out. We're at neutral Turmoil. And this is a mid-game buff. This is going to help us in the mid-game by having more Jaguar production. We lowered Dominion, which is an early game nerf in that we're not going to be able to get as many Eagle Warriors a turn. But we may decide to recruit Jags because we now have Turmoil. Jags are much more gold expensive, so we'll get our fort up maybe a little later. But we should still be able to expand okay with this. It will come down and talk about the Bless in a minute. You start off as a Heat 1 preference, which is why we went down to Cold 2, is we were really desperate to get every last bit of points for our Bless out. So we went to Cold 2, and basically that was the only way to do it. So if we go up to Heat 3, there's going to be a few good things that are going to come out of this. One is that we're not going to get like cold fatigue in our own Dominion. Like, we're not going to get additional fatigue for our Sacred units because we've got minor fire resistance on our Bless, which I believe will help us with like heat exhaustion. The other thing is on 2, we can now have map move 2 over 2 plains provinces with our Jaguars, and that is going to go a long way to at least giving us corridors that we can reinforce units through, hopefully, on a lot of maps. The next, I think Death 3 is still a no-brainer on this nation. You want to go growth on almost every nation, but the thing that you have to remember, and this is another reason why you may not even want to do order, is that you're not going to have these scales in a lot of places, right? These scales are primarily going to be like in just your most core provinces, especially in the late mid-game. So you're probably going to have other people's scales, so hope that they took good ones. Yeah. The other thing is, if we... really, you can do it even without your Pretender, but our Pretender, I can't remember, we can't pull it up. But I did it in this game. I don't know if I talked about it too much, but you can cast Blood Fecundity, which is basically a spell that increases growth. And you can do that in all of your really high pop provinces, which are just going to put them at neutral growth scales. This will also work in enemy Dominion too, I think. So you can be an enemy Dominion, and if they don't have growth, you can cast it. But you definitely want it on your cap and a few other places. And it will not only give you increased income from having better growth, but it will stop the population decline. So that is a really good use of early slaves. And we can do this in all of our important provinces. Now, we'll waste some kind of blood economy, but I think that's totally worth it. Because basically it's 1 turn per slave, so if you do it by like 20, if you cast 20 extra slaves in it, that's going to be for a pretty long time. And you can do that in each of your provinces and maybe spend like 100 blood slaves to get 3 free scales. Pretty worth it. The thing is that spell doesn't get used much because most nations that blood hunt also want to go growth to help have extra population to blood hunt with. But I don't think we can afford that. The thing is, with Mictlan, you end up having to say, I want to have scales in my provinces, and then you end up like blood sacking to get your blood or your dominion everywhere, or you say, I want to have a good bless. And I think you could do either. Like, I'm sure there's a way to play these guys with like a rainbow. I mean, I have a rainbow pretender, right? But a rainbow pretender with less stuff and go good scales. And it could be that that's even a better build because you have more money. You don't have to worry about late game Dominion Global stuff. But you're definitely going to be a lot weaker in the early and mid game. I think it would be fun. Maybe it would be fun. Maybe I'll do that sometime in the future. Is I'll play like a Scales Micklin or something. But it's a decision you have to make, and it's not shades of gray. Either you're going to have good scales with a pretty good bless, and you want to have your Dominion everywhere, or you then say, I'm not going to have my Dominion anywhere because my Dominion's like pure cancer, and we're going to trash everything. And that's kind of the direction that I went here. Okay, so Death 3 still. Misfortune, we're taking that 3 now instead of Luck. I hate Misfortune 3. I freaking hate it. We're opening ourselves up to a very high likelihood of getting a few Magic is Fading events, which are going to kill our gem pool potentially. I'm not sure if you can still hidey hold gems away from it, like I did in my Airmore series, but I don't like Misfortune 3 in general. I really don't like it. There's some reasons that it's okay for us. One is that we're blood hunting everywhere. We're going to have big swarms of dudes. Potentially, we can have a few sacreds at all of our blood hunting locations too. And all of that should mean that we can deal with most of the indie attacks. So that would potentially, we're going to have swarms of slaves. In the middle game, we can have somebody there casting mass protection on them. And just sitting there deployed, waiting for either enemy raiders or indie raiders to come in from Misfortune 3. This, and I'm not 100% sure, I would probably, this is one of those things, like you play the nation again, like if I were to play this build that I'm showing you here in another game, I could totally come back after the game and be like, well, I thought it was a good idea. Turns out I got wrecked too hard by the Misfortune scales at some key moments. Like you can get attacked by, if you remember my Bandar Log game, we got attacked by Demon Knights that just destroyed an army. It's kind of shitty. So such is life. Anyway, that's Misfortune. And then we're taking Drain 3. I think Drain 3 is a super no-brainer because you can get the little blood imps to help you research. And then we don't get quills, which sucks, but I think in a normal game you would want to tech up to Construction 6 faster than I did and get Lightless Lanterns because you definitely have a lot of fire income with this nation. Or you can. Yeah. So I think that's for the scales. And the other thing too is if you're getting forts and temples up to spam out Jaguars, it's very likely you're going to get 10 temples out by the late mid game, which means you'll be up to Dominion Strength 8, which is fine. You could bump this up to 7. It'll be at the cost of something else though. This last Dominion point's going to be pretty expensive on this Pretender chassis because it's a rainbow and it starts at 1. So going up to 6, I think if you go to 7, you're probably going to want to start considering another chassis. Because this Dominion gets really expensive if you go too high here. But if you start going higher because you want to max out more, like if you want more Jaguar production, you have to remember that it's kind of coming at a cost because towards the late game, most of your sacred production, or at least half of it, is going to be through your blood economy. And that's the other thing, too, with scales. Like, you go Scales Micklin, it's good because you're going to have better research, you're going to have more mages, you're going to have more forts. There's a lot of good reasons you could think to go scales. One of the things, though, is as you transition into a blood economy, scales is less important. Because you're not really relying on money, you're relying on the people themselves in those provinces, which a lot of those are going to be dying with those death scales, but anyway. Okay, what else? Let's talk about the build. So let's flash up the build we had again. We had minor fire, attack, quickness, luck, strength of flesh, and blood surge. Now, if you recall, I talked about in the after action review, people were questioning the minor fire resistance. I think you have to have it as this nation. Even though there weren't a lot of fire nations in the game we were playing, there were some nations that had fire access, like Man had fire access with flaming arrows, Ulm had fire access, Pythium has some minor fire access. There are a few nations that had fire access. And all you need is fire access for it to become a priority once somebody's doing mass protection, and they don't have any kind of fire resistance, and they've got a fire vulnerability every single fight. And if that comes out, you can get punished really, really hard. So this is not something that's good for early in the game, but by middle of the game, if you're relying on mass protection, you really are going to need this. Now, some nations, they might not want to do it because they're going to fade out of this phase. Like, they'll go through a mass protection phase, but then in 10 or 15 turns, they'll be in like an army of lead or an army of gold phase. If for those of you who don't know, that's a battlefield-wide earth spell that raises everybody's protection by 20, which is way better than mass protection, but it gives you a weakness to shock instead of a weakness to fire. So if you're going to transition out of it, you may not actually need this fire resistance. But from Mictlan, we're going to have a really hard time transitioning out of it. You could do things on your Pretender to make it where you can kind of bootstrap your way into Earth. It's going to be pretty tricky, I think. Earth is one of those paths that's kind of hard to bootstrap into. The only way to get mages for Earth, reliable, good mages, is the Troll King. I mean, you can have the King of Earth Elementals later too, but those are unique. And Troll Kings are expensive. You're not going to have a ton of them. So if it's something you do, it's going to be at great cost, and it's something you're going to do poorly. So anyway, still an advocate for this. The attack skill's nice, but maybe not as important with also having quickness and Blood Surge. Luck was super good, but I think fades in utility as the game goes late. So this is like an early and mid-game buff, but kind of less important in the late game because it would be redundant with something you could do otherwise. And the strength buffs are great because it's very hard in this game to buff damage. There's several ways to buff defense and different types of defense, but it's very difficult to buff damage. You basically get non-stacking Strength of Giants, and then you get Rush of Strength or Bloodlust, but all those are the same. They don't stack, and you basically just get 4 Strength, and that's it. And when other people start getting big armor buffs or things like that later in the game, being able to punch through that armor in armies is a pretty big deal. So Strength is one of those things that translates well in all phases of the game. And it becomes, like, at the beginning of the game when maybe there's not a lot of protection type stuff out, Strength may not seem as important, but later in the game it becomes increasingly important. So let's pull up again this guy. So what are the decisions that I made here in this Bless? Minor fire resistance for aforementioned reasons. Attack skill because it's nice. If you're fighting a really, like somebody playing Abyssia, and you know they're a really good player, you may actually want to go for major fire resistance here. And you may even want to go, if there's a couple fire nations, that are nations that have really good fire potential, you may even want to go major and minor, and then this would free up a few points, because you could go down to 4. And I think if you're 4, you would get 5 bless points here. I thought, oh no, this one's Astro. For some reason I was thinking we got a bonus fire bless. I was like, don't we get bonus fire points? I think that's early age. But anyway, yeah. So I think with this you could also do minor and major fire resistance. And if you're fighting a really good Abyssia, it's totally worth considering, because then you can just mow into fire elementals and not necessarily care. Quickness, again, super awesome on these guys. It's expensive, and it's especially expensive on this chassis because we have to buy it from 0. And this may not be the optimal chassis. I haven't put this in the calculator, but quickness is something I would kind of want to hold on to. I don't think there were other rainbows, though, that had water. Astral, you can see we have nerfed ourselves with Astral. We only have Astral 3, but this is going to open up magic weapons and minor magic resistance. Now, getting major magic resistance and minor magic resistance would be nice. And if you trash Turmoil, this is one of the things that you might want to consider kind of buffing back up, is getting a little higher Astral. Of course, having higher Astral is going to be nice. You'll feel more comfortable taking your Pretender to fights, because you don't have to worry about Magic Duel. but also it will open up some more late game options for you. So that's definitely an option. If you trade out, because again, having better order is good for the early and middle game. So if you trade this out for Turmoil, you're going to have a worse early middle game most likely. But then especially if you put it in Astral, you'll leverage yourself into a much better late game because you're going to have really good Astral access, which is important for controlling spells with Dispel and stuff like that. But also you're going to have better magic resistance on your troops, which is pretty important. I wasn't to the point where I could do anti-magic and stuff, but for the Jaguars with 10 magic resistance that they start with, plus 1, that gets them up to 11. With anti-magic, it gets them to 15, which is pretty respectable. 17 would be, is legit good magic resistance. So, getting 2 more would be pretty solid, if you could afford it. I don't... It's kind of up to you whether you think it's worth it. And who you're playing against. If you're fighting Astral Nations, it makes it even more worthy of considering. The other thing, fighting Astral Nations, you're going to be maybe a bit more hesitant to bring Astral Mages to fights. So, it's a consideration, because then the only way to get MR is going to be through your Bless, not anti-magic. Magic weapons. I think this was the number one thing that my Bless missed out on. I think Mictlan does not have great access to magic weapons. You need to get it in your Bless, because you have great access to Sacreds. So, I think this was the number one thing I missed out on. Undying is pretty good. I think all your forms get it. So Jags, I think they go through Undying twice. So you get twice the bang for your buck. Pretty nice on Eagle Warriors too. Later in the game, once you have mass regeneration, which would probably be, in terms of research priorities, it's going to be very late in the game for Mictlan. Once you get Lightless Lanterns, you actually have an okay research economy. So it's not as bad, but you're not going to be a research leader, most likely. Okay, so that's Undying. Anyway, it's nice, but the main thing about having Death is one, that just having the threes here means we don't have to get 4s, and so it's going to make this Pretender a little cheaper. So picking up Death is nice just for that. It's also going to open up the Death Blood stuff we can do, which are like the Assassins, which I ended up empowering in Death in this game, if you remember. And that's going to give us access to Revenants, which can summon Mound Kings. Death 3 is also kind of like the minimum point to start climbing the Death ladder. Really, you want Death 4. But with Death 3, we can make Skull Staff, and then if we ever get the Astral boosters that are going to buff up Death even more, or we get any of the level 8 construction level 8 unique items, we can get Death up 1 more. And then you can do the Skull Face and stuff to fully climb up into Death. But Death 3 is a pretty good starting spot. Death 1 is not very good, and Death 2 is significantly worse than Death 3 in terms of climbing into Death. But, yeah. This also is going to open up vampires for us, too, if we want to spam out Death Mages everywhere. Yeah. So, anyway, Death is kind of nice. Nature, low light vision is going to be good if we're worried about fighting darkness. Like, I ended up fighting into Ulm in darkness. It wasn't a big deal because most of Ulm's troops were Rangers who were also kind of crapped on by darkness. And then a lot of my troops were demons, which do not mind darkness at all. So, not a huge deal, but later, especially if you have Death access, you may be the one casting darkness. And if you're casting darkness, why not get low light vision for your troops for just 1 point? Because that's going to make Jaguars significantly better and Eagle Warriors significantly better against people who do not have dark vision. And then the other thing is major poison resistance. So if normally you're not really worried about Pythium and Hydras and stuff like that, but Satis could have gone underwater. I don't think late age Satis can easily cast Fell Vapors. Maybe they can, but it can be pretty damn useful. I'll put it that way. Having major poison resistance on there. Also, Foul Vapors is something it turns out we can cast with our nature random Kings of Rain, which you're not going to have many of, but you'll probably have a couple of. And so even if you just have a couple that can threaten Foul Vapors and you have major poison resistance, that in and of itself is going to potentially make an army unstoppable. Yeah, so that's a pretty strong effect, and it can be one of the things that will let you win underwater, because I'm pretty sure you can cast Foul Vapors underwater. That could be wrong. Let's check real quick. Just click on any nation. Whoops. Enchantment, Foul Vapors. Yeah, it can be cast underwater. So, potentially having a bunch of your nature mages with sacreds or any units guarding. Yeah, ideally your sacred units guarding them. They can spam out water elementals, and water elementals plus Foul Vapors is going to take care of a lot of armies. So it makes you pretty strong underwater if you can get, 20 of your rain mages to guard your commanders while you cast Foul Vapors. And then potentially you can have even some of your normal underwater recruits if you have Poison Ward that you just casted on. That will make you pretty solid underwater. And the biggest change we can see down here is in Blood. I really like Blood Surge, and what I'm adding here is Blood Bond, and there's a few reasons for that. One is it's going to be really good on your Ocelotls who have a big HP pool. They're going to be a little spread out, so Blood Bond won't necessarily work, but if you have Ocelotls in late game numbers, it's going to work very well on them. If you're severely outnumbered and they get all scattered up, you're going to be in a bit more trouble. Sometimes you can fix some of that through scripting. But your Jaguars, who you're going to have a ton of, even more in the mid game because we fixed our turmoil scales, it's going to be super good on them. And one of the problems with the Jaguars is their first form isn't that killy, and what can tend to happen is you'll have Jaguars that are like in a corner position, and they, like, if here's the Jaguar line, and here they are at the corner, this Jaguar will get focused down, and he'll switch to his killy form, and then he'll die. And the next Jaguar will start getting focused down, and they'll switch to their killy form, and they'll die. And meanwhile, all these Jaguars in the middle aren't doing a lot of damage. If we have Blood Surge on them, it is going to knock them all. They'll all, not really, but I mean, they'll kind of all be not in Jaguar form, and then it will knock most of them. They'll all start going at the same time. And as that happens, they will all become very killy and just start annihilating waves. So it's going to do, what it's going to do is it's going to keep people in weird out of position spots from just going Jaguar and instantly dying. And it's going to make it much more that lots of them are going to turn at the same time and then kill everybody. So I think this is a pretty big buff. I think this is going to be really good on this nation. We did have to kind of ditch some of the strength bonus. But you can see we still have attack. We still have quickness. And I think all of it's okay. We're still going to be able to do Rush of Strength and Bloodlust later to make up for some of that that lost damage. But I think we're fine. I think this is probably a significantly better build than the one I used. We're going to be a little bit weaker in expansion, most likely, but maybe not, because Blood Bond Jaguars with this Bless, with quickness, I bet you they're nasty. I bet a squad of like 5 Jaguars, I bet you they take almost no attrition during expansion. I haven't tested this, by the way. But actually, you know what? Let's do it, guys. Let's do it. We are here. We're shit-talking about our old Mictlan build. And let's just see, does this work? Does this actually work? Mictlan. Let's load up our Pretender God, new measure here. And let's just see how we can do with expansion real quick. Okay, so we have this god who actually, by the way, researches way more than our previous god. I don't think he could expand. Yeah. You could potentially... Actually, you probably want him researching in this shape, because if he gets hit by something, he'll end up changing to his higher HP state. Like some random arrow, or I don't know. But if he starts in this one, he won't. Does this other guy get the... Oh, yeah. You totally want to make sure you switch him out, because this guy gets the Bringer of Fortune and whatever, and we're Misfortune 3, we definitely care about that. So we're going to have him research. He's going to research way faster than our other god, which is... He was a huge portion of our research economy, too. So I think we'll just do Construction 4 for our first priority. That'll let us get little imps and stuff. I think for our recruitment, we're going to just see if we can tap out Jags. Okay, so we can get 5 Jags and a Priest, which that's a little bit like 30 acres and a mule. I think that's all you need. Props to anybody who gets that reference. We've got our starting army, which is shit. I think we'll go and profit this guy, and then... God, that's cheap. We saved so much money. Like, to think that this army is probably going to one turn, or, like, be able to expand. It's ridiculous. It's purely ridiculous. So we're looking for a couple things. We're looking who we can slam our shit army into. But honestly, these guys are so shit. Slings. Okay, if we just let them sling, do these guys have slings too? I think we can probably take high attrition and slam into these guys. Heavy infantry crossbowmen. I have no idea how this is going to do, by the way. It could be that these guys are going to need a different... like, you're going to need 10 of them, so you have to wait 10 turns to do an expansion party. But an expansion party every 2 turns is not bad. I mean, it's definitely not as good as an expansion party every turn. This one's going to be easier. And so we're not really counting provinces here. I'm just testing this. We're just seeing which things we can slam into and which we can't. Now, we could also be potentially recruiting... What map move? Are these guys at combat speed 11? I wonder if I have, like, combat speed 10. We could be throwing in one of these guys, too. They're combat speed 10, so they'll lag behind. And they have a standard, which will be nice for things like repel, and then also for not being big wimps and running. I think we're just gonna perform... Actually, we don't want him to minion. We don't want to perform a blood sacrifice well. Don't know what this guy's gonna do. Why don't you come with them? You can go die. So I think what we're gonna do, we're gonna put these guys here. These guys will be in front because they're gonna be eating arrows, fire, closest. See if we can route the first squad. And then your job is to make sure these guys don't run. Something like this. I think I have a sling. No, I have a javelin. Okay. That could go horribly, horribly wrong. We'll see how good we think this is. Okay, so these are the Jags. I think we're on hold and attack. I think I got both of them. Oh, shit, I forgot. That's the problem expanding with these guys. Once they bless themselves... Well, we could have had them hold. We'll try it again. Well, let's do it here so that my ego is a little less damaged. Hold an attack. Blessing. Blessing. Hold, hold, hold. Give them no orders. I don't think there's any real way to keep these guys from running into combat super easily. It is an argument for expanding with these guys who are also 2 recruitment points. They're also much better leaders. Because at Holy 2, they can do a few other spells to buff themselves. Or, like, this guy could do Fireflies. 200, 230. Astral, he can sit there and buff himself. Or at least cast Twist Fate. Not totally sure. So you'd have to tinker around with expansion. We're just going to see how killy we think this bless is. Okay, we lost there too. Not surprising. The Jaguars seemed to do their job. It was just that stupid priest running in. Okay. Okay, they're shooting at my priest, which I'm not very happy about. Okay, one Jaguar turned. Okay, nice. We have a crippled Jaguar too. So, oh, you know what? I think I remember what you do with this actually. Wait, did I not do it with this group? I'll try it with this one. I totally remember what you do. You need to have one guy sitting here like holding fire. And this still may not be totally the right way to expand with these guys, but I think we can do this and then hold. And that should keep them out of... hold and fire, and then hold and attack. And we'll put one of these guys in here to kind of keep their morale up. He may die. This may not be a good investment. In fact, it's probably not, but we'll find out. So anyway, we're able to take that. Let's get an archer here. We'll just wait. I think they're going to die if we slam them into another province. Let's see how we went here. Yeah, these guys with quickness, they run pretty far ahead. This guy just lags behind and is giving them morale. Yeah. So that was good. The reason these guys are here is when this guy's on hold, he's not gonna... I think we'll put him stay behind troops as his final one. He's not going to run in front of the slingers, and the slingers are going to sit there throwing little stones, not doing anything. Okay, we just got... And that's why we got this archer to do the same thing. These guys are only 4, so they're going to potentially run in combat, which is a problem. So this probably is what you should use your shit starting army for. It's just to keep your priests from running in. And you can put them a little farther forward, and I think that will make it less likely that archers will choose to target your priest. Just copy this real quick. Okay. So let's see if we are truly expanding one province, one expansion party a turn. Nope. I'm a little surprised here. I wonder if they got our commander. Okay, they switch. They do kind of die. So you do need them in kind of critical mass. That I think with luck they would have probably survived there. Okay, I don't have him on attack closest to, which is another script problem. So we lost that. This is also, I think, just a decent example of how you test expansion. So I think a lot of times I show you guys things, like once I've figured it out, and you don't really see some of the dirtiness. And this is pretty dirty. But like, the thing is, I think a lot of times people like getting a bless where they're like, oh, I can, look, I can slam this into everything, and it works always, and that's how I came up with a good build. Well, the thing is, you're probably coming up with something that's like pretty expensive a lot of times. You're like, oh, I came up with an expansion pretender. I can expand to like 20 provinces. Well, the thing to get good at in this game is figuring out like what's the minimum you can do to expand. Like what's something that will like work every time, but like what is something that's like a little dicey. Because usually if it works every time, you've overinvested either in your bless or in like your expansion party itself. So let's see what we can recruit here. We're going to try this again. So I think there's some problems with our scripting. Hold an attack closest. So that's going to be hotkey number 2. Hotkey number 1 was fine. This guy right here, hold and fire. I think we only need one of these standard bears here. But it may be that 5 is just a little too small for this to really work, because they really do rely on sharing the damage. And we're out of little slingers here, so let's get one of these little armored slingers. Okay, we got an armored slinger 2. And I'm not doing... Like, if I came through and was doing a real test, we'd... Man, this actually is not really working that well. Okay, so these guys struggle with heavy cav, apparently. And it's late age, so there's a fair amount of heavy cav. We should probably be okay here. We didn't tend to get chewed up too badly by that kind of stuff. And then 3 will be holding fire. So here's our prophet, who we haven't been using at all. You can see we definitely could use, especially having one more point of holy would be really nice. Now, honestly, with how much gold we're spending and saving, we totally could be, like, we could be building another fort here if I were, like, paying any attention. And then we could have, yet again, more Jag production, but... God, our commander got sniped? Let's just take a look at these guys. Are they that killy? Okay, we can see they're not... Like, a lot of these guys are not blood surged. Only half of them are blood surged. Yeah. So, okay, we're going to try expansion again real quick. So, presumably, this video is in the right order, because if you wanted to see how this thing could work, you kind of got the soundbite at the beginning. But if you want to see how you can actually use it, and if it actually does work, you're going to stay around for the end. Now, what I will do is if this doesn't work at all, I will probably not put it up because I don't want to get out bad information like this is how you play Mictlan, and then like under no circumstances can you expand with it. But certainly once certain blesses and those types of things start coming out, it will be better. I think what we're going to try this time is we're going to be a little less greedy on expansions. We're going to still send out a year 1 expansion party. But and I'm not sure if I want to do it on this guy. Maybe it's better to just wait and do it on a priest. This guy doesn't... I don't really need a prophet. I don't want my dominion spreading. Yeah. I could use it to just kill stuff. Like this guy could expand with sacreds. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe we'll make him a prophet. We'll let him expand. Our first guy won't be this dude. It'll be somebody to help research. We're going to research construction, and then alteration. So, okay. This guy's researching. We're going to switch to making Mictlan priests, and then we're going to add in an armored slinger or two. I think that's okay. Just have you wait, or you can patrol, so I don't have to keep messing with you. This will be our first expansion squad. We've got some kind of hard indies. We should actually, this should kind of be okay. Attack closest. These guys are going to be on fire archers. And this guy's going to be on divine blessing. So I think actually we're going to put something like this. I want these shielded guys to hopefully pick up a fair amount of the arrows. This guy's going to be back over here. These guys will just run past them, I think. Put these guys a little bit more out on a flank, and they'll be on attack closest. So, make that 3, we'll make that 2. Or, well, that's not going to be 2, anyway. That's okay. We've got our next expansion party queued up. Okay, that worked much better. And the nice thing about having these guys fire archers is they're not hitting my jaguars as much with friendly fire. So these guys still are not all turning at the same time. Now, I think for what we're going to do now is we're going to keep slamming this guy into other groups. I think these are hard enough where we're going to be not greedy. And we're going to alternate between getting a researcher. Which honestly, if we're going to be having more too, I think actually this guy's going to be... I think we're going to... this guy's so expensive for an expansion party leader. But he's so good. Yeah, I think we're gonna try it. We're gonna try this because I want to try the economical thing first rather than trying the safe thing. So this guy's still gonna lead the expansion party. There's a couple problems with this. One is he's got 10 leadership, which is gonna limit how many we can put in. Basically, we're gonna be able to put in like only 3 more jags. Okay, so it's not going to be quite every 2 turns. It'll be like every 1.5 turns we expand. Okay, we lost the Jaguar Warrior. We lost some of these guys. These guys are running out of steam. I think they're going to come back. Which is going to be nice. They can pick up another... They can get round 2 here. But these guys are going to come and expand. I think we're going to try slamming into these guys, and hopefully that works. So, blessing, blessing, blessing. Hold, hold, hold. Stay behind troops. And then you are going to hold in fire. That's 3. You guys are going to hold an attack closest. That's 2. I'll put you right here. Put you right here. Okay, should work. There's a lot of heavy cav there. This is going to need to be just... Oh, this is the other thing, min-maxing, which I didn't take advantage of. When you're getting the mage, you can get a an extra Jag, which we're definitely going to use when we pick up, because we're going to get a big squad of Jags here on this guy. So we'll see how these guys do when they're all bunched up. I don't know if we got them all. We didn't get all of them. But okay, we just got the last ones. Oh, great morale. Okay, yeah, when they fail morale checks like that, I think we have the wrong expansion leader. I think this Mictlan Priest is not going to cut it. I think he's kind of fired. That is going to suck, though, because basically what it's going to mean is that we are going to have to buy these really expensive guys. Which is totally going to pay for itself if expansion actually works versus this garbage shit fest that we have right now. I think we're going to attack cavalry here. And we're going to get ready. We're going to get another one of these guys here. And next turn we'll get a Priest King. I think we might have been a little too greedy with expansion. I think that actually went well. Yeah. Killing 20 heavy cav, only losing 2 Jags. Not bad. So this group can probably just slam into stuff. Here we're going to go ahead and get a Priest King. And he will get loaded up next turn. And you can see our research is pretty phenomenal. This isn't really a test in terms of how many we can get. I'm probably what I'm going to do after this, like once I think I figured it out, because I think it's kind of cool you guys getting to see how, like, to figure it out properly rather than just being shown a more polished product. I'm probably going to pause it and then just do an expansion test afterwards so you don't have to watch it again. And then we'll just see how that does. And I'll just show you the results after this. Did I not freaking... I thought I hotkeyed that. Okay. Leaving them no orders. Sometimes they'll cast spells, sometimes they'll stay behind troops. Very rarely do they run into combat, so it's pretty safe. And I say that he's probably going to like do it immediately. So this is big enough we should be able to kill heavy cav. This kind of is a hard... Well, it's late age. But it's still probably like slightly harder than a normal start. One of these guys, switch back to another thing. The other thing we could test is Eagle Warriors. I don't think that would work very well with this Bless. I think Luck was pretty good on Eagle Warriors. This might be like positively bad on Eagle Warriors. There's a lot of heavy cav. My guys got kind of all split up. So I think we figured it out anyway, at least what we need to do. And it's a lot of Priest Kings, which actually is okay. Priest Kings are kind of the shit. It kind of sucks wasting cap turns at the beginning, making shitty mages, but these guys are kind of awesome. These guys have awesome leadership. So that is all working out. Our research is pretty awesome. Wouldn't know we took Drain 3. Okay, we're successful there. These guys are really down to like not as many Jags. Killed everything here. Let's watch this battle. It's kind of interesting. I think they slammed into my archers. It is important, I think, to script your Jags to run into heavy cav, like to attack cavalry. They might have still run to the back. Let's see if this group is... Yeah, they are on attack cavalry, okay. Maybe you just want to rearrange their positioning where it's not like these guys on a flank where they run in. Maybe you want them in the front. Problem if they're in the front, they're going to get hit by a lot of arrows, which can be okay. Anyway, for right now, we're definitely going to switch back to a more traditional... something like this. Okay, so I think the thing I've kind of figured out from doing this testing is with this particular bless, you're probably not going to be able to do an expansion party a turn. You're probably looking more at an expansion party every 2 turns, which is okay. And then just 1. Why am I putting all these people in the wrong spot? Tell me, world. So these guys will come fight them. This expansion party. Okay, let's be real. Oh no, they're fine. This is the one that's all beat to hell. Okay, we're gonna have to come back. The good news is, because this guy's coming back, we're not gonna have to get another priest king. He's just gonna reload, and then we'll come kill that. Okay. Holy shit, these guys got wrecked. Oh, these guys are on attack closest. Oh, but I have Divine Blessing. Yeah, the Afflictions is kind of messing with him a little. How much HP did the Jags have? I forget. They have a fair amount. I think we're a little suffering from lack of damage. That additional, like, +2 strength kind of matters. Though I think we probably... Okay, so does having eyes, that kind of matters. What is it, 12? I don't know. Yeah, you kind of want a little more strength. These are not, like, super duper killy. Yeah, I'm not 100% sold on Blood Bond. It certainly did transform everybody into Jaguars, and the Jaguars are definitely more killy. And then if you combine that with Rush of Strength later, it would definitely be really good. Or with, like, Mass Protection, because right now we have, like, really shitty protection. Ooh, man. Okay, we took a beating there. Lost almost all our Jaguars, but we killed them. Okay, if we look at it, though... not even that hard. Right, not even a ton of heavy cav. But what I do believe, and I believe this pretty firmly, is that once you start stacking these guys up and having much bigger stacks, they will become increasingly more killy. Especially if you start doing things like Wave Warriors and stuff, which, by the way, we can totally do. But we can see we expend ourselves. I definitely had much less attrition when I was expanding before with the previous Luck Bless. Potentially, too, we could rush to Alteration and have these guys casting Wooden Warriors in some early war, which would make a huge difference. Wooden Warriors, I think, it's only Nature 2. So yeah, they can cast it without any items. And that is potentially, definitely something you would want to think about. Okay. So we don't like fighting heavy cav. So we only got one more turn, and then it'll be the end of it's late winter. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and do the final turn just so we can see what it would be when I'm futzing around. Okay, these guys aren't expanding anywhere. Unless they're going to kind of come in here with... Can they make it? No. So... Okay, futzing around with expansion, not really knowing what I'm doing. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And we have a fair amount of money, enough to have a lot of forts. Wait, how many did I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, 15. So we should be able to have 20. I'm going to pause it, and then we're going to do expansion one more time. Okay, I think I've tested it now. Let's see, let me make sure it's... Yeah, it's recording. My overlay's gone. So what I have found is that... So if you look at what we did for our Bless, we made some trades. We got rid of some of the things which were good in the early game. And we got, instead, some things which are kind of bad in the early game, but good in the late game. Like, we got magic weapons, which doesn't do shit in the early game. We got Undying, which is okay, but much better kind of later, I think. Blood Bond, which is going to be good later once we have way more Sacreds, but not really great in expansion when we don't have many. Dark Vision, which does Jack All in the early game, and Poison Resistance, which does Jack All in the early game. So, we got a bunch of things which aren't great. Poison Resistance actually is going to be really nice for expanding underwater, by the way. That's another reason for your Sacred Troops. But anyway, we took a nerf in the early game. What we did, though, was we strengthened up our Jag production for the mid-game, and we have a better Bless for the late game. Now, this is decidedly, because I've tested it a few times now, and I've ended up getting around the same provinces all the time. And I probably could fine-tune it to get 20, but this is, almost every time I get like 16. And that's how many I got this time. So, there's a few things that I think I've learned, if you want to try this build. I think it's definitely weaker at expansion, but I think once you have Jag production up, and like you can see, this is year 1, and we're almost done with Alt 5, which means we'll be ready with Wooden Warriors for our first war. Another option, too, is going Barkskin as part of your Bless, and then you can get other stuff. And that's totally doable. I can't think of a huge downside for it. It's something we're going to want to cast anyway. It means you can prioritize things other than Alt 6 or Alt 7, which is pretty high to research for something that you may not end up needing. But you do want to go that way for all the luck blesses too. Oh, sorry. So I think it's a bit of a trade-off. If you went Barkskin in your Bless in conjunction with everything else, obviously it would come at a cost. You would probably again have to like tank order and to get some turmoil, but maybe okay. Yeah, the thing is, if you do that, so there's a few things that limited us in this build right now, is that because our Dominion's so low, which is really a function of having a rainbow, we're really limited on how many Sacreds we can get in the early game. Like you can see, we have way more recruitment and resource points. We're limited by holy points. But that limit is really only going to be for a big province like our capital. We're still going to be recruit point limited in our first forts. And you can see where this fort's almost coming up. This fort's getting built. This fort, I think we're building this turn. And we had money to build another fort too. I think I was a little sloppy in this kind of quick playthrough. But yeah, there's some issues with this. You definitely have more attrition and expansion. and I think you really do miss a little bit of the strength. So I'm not sure if this is the optimal build, but the things I do still feel pretty strongly about, I think you need magic weapons, and I think the MR is nice. And the problem, though, is if you go magic weapons, it basically means you have to throw off luck. And then if you throw off luck, you're going to be way weaker. Like, the things that we had the most trouble with... Oh! Yawn. Sorry, guys. The thing we have the most trouble with is heavy cav. So what I ended up doing for later tests is getting 2 of these guys really early, like turn 2. And I just had them spam out slaves, which is going to be nice for when we want to start our blood economy, just having like a nice slave reserve. We end up using them for a few things. There's a few things you can do with this. One is if you're using Priest Kings, which are kind of expensive, but somewhat needed if you don't want to lose morale checks. And then they also have hats, so they don't tend to die to arrows as much. They have great leadership. So if you use them to expand, you can basically give them a script where they go and they bless everything. This squad's kind of beat up, but and then they do Barkskin and Enlarge, and they're going to tend to not die. So that is a good use for the Priest Kings. Priest Kings are great to have in your army too, so it's nice to use the cap turns to kind of get good mages, even though it's expensive. Go slam into that next, but yeah, so you use them for a few things. One is you use them to bodyguard your commanders so that if you get flanked, you just have cheap shit that is going to take damage. The other thing is arrows that come back. Some of these bodyguards will be in the same square as your commander, and they will eat some of the arrows too. I definitely lost some bodyguards in expansion. And then this is kind of like a... You usually want like one slinger too. It's less important for these guys because they'll usually find other things to do than... just run into combat. I'm so yawny. I'm sorry. But yeah, basically like this, and the other thing you're going to use them for, like this province, you can see we've kind of been saving it because it's got a lot of heavy cav. And I'll just show you what you have to do. You're going to have to use some of these for like, and you have to be careful how many you use because as they die, they could potentially cause an HP rout, so you have to be careful. And if you do too many of that, you may have to actually... And these guys have a lot of leadership, so you can do this. You can just stack behind here. You do hold an attack. And these guys actually have okay morale under these guys, because they have the slave bonus, and then these guys are also taskmasters. So hold an attack, this will just kind of keep the morale. We're going to need enough to eat all these lance charges. We may actually need a few more, so let's toss some on here. Cavalry are the worst thing for this particular bless. The luck goes a long way to helping you survive cav. Now, a lot of this expansion you wouldn't really be doing in a multiplayer because somebody's going to spawn down here. But like this would eat us alive. So this is what you have to learn when you're testing expansion. I mean, the other thing too is we could potentially recruit or like get some slaves and then slam into it instead of coming back. It's probably the better plan. Like here, these guys are just spent, so they're going to come home. But we'll show you this battle. I think it will work, but we'll probably take a few losses. So we'll just see. This is kind of like what expansion's like. This build is going to pick up a lot when you have more forts that are spamming out more Jaguar warriors, obviously. And it's going to be... You're going to feel pretty limited until that happens. But that's going to happen pretty fast. So getting your first fort is super important. You may even want to delay or like really minimize recruitment. Like one of the things, I got a bunch of these guys to get my research up, but I certainly could have not gotten these guys, and in fact I probably should have. I think you probably don't want to get these guys for research and get these to start until you have enough money for your first fort. Because saving for that first fort is super important, because the timing on that's going to affect when you come out of this shit phase, basically. So I'll just show you how this battle goes with cav and why you need... I think it's this one. Why you're going to need all these slaves. Okay. Have to soak up those lance charges. Oh shit, they got a little past me here. And then everything dies. I don't know if we lost any jags there. I think we might not have. Okay, we lost 2. so that's okay. This was a pretty hard province. A lot of heavy infantry and heavy cavalry. Not quite as killy, decidedly less killy. With that extra strength makes a big difference. So if you do go this bless, you definitely don't want to get rid of things like Blood Surge. Let's check one more thing. Let's see how, like, once we're in the meat of it, how much, like, what percent of these guys are Blood Surged. Okay, so kind of a lot of them are Blood Surged right now. But you could see how if you're going against giants, you could get stuck kind of where none of them are Blood Surged. Like, now most of them are. And these guys would totally love Wave Warriors too, which is something that you'll probably be able to cast on them pretty easily. Mass Protection too. Blood Bond is really going to shine once you start getting some of the protection stuff up on them, like Luck. I don't know how Luck interacts with Blood Bond. It would be interesting. What matters is, does Luck happen before Blood Bond or after? And ideally, you want it to happen before, I think. If it happens before, then you're not going to distribute damage that Luck blocks. But if it happens after, then potentially people could be like 1 HP and Blood Bond will route damage to them. No, if it happens before, it's going to block. But if it happens before, the other problem too is it's going to route damage from Blood Bond to people. And if the Luck doesn't trigger on them receiving Blood Bond damage, then they may be in trouble. So anyway, I haven't tested it. I don't know how that'll work, but your late game definitely involves trying to get Luck on these guys with Battle Fortune and stuff like that. So anyway, I'm not sure if this is like a super comprehensive guide in terms of what I would be doing next with these guys. I'm kind of not satisfied with this expansion. This is certainly enough to get into a multiplayer game. And, you know, okay, I didn't like move priests here and stuff to have a temple pre-built, but once you start spamming out Jags and another fort, which actually, let's just do it. Let's see how many we get in this fort. Just send this guy here real quick. Let's just see what our recruitment is in a nice little ideal place that we would be building. So, holy shit. This has way more population than it should. Yeah, so we can just crank Jaguars out. So this would be like, yeah, it's crazy. So we could even get up to 6 once we have another thing. But I don't think this is reasonable. I think we'd probably have like be limited to 5. So basically, once you get your first fort out, you're doubling your Jag production, which is huge. So you definitely, I think the main mistake I made was getting these guys for research, which is fine and all. But, I mean, it may even be so far as you want to not, like, you're going to alternate between Priest Kings or a Mictlan Priest plus a Tribal King is cheaper than a Priest King. So even though it seems really inefficient, you may, and so you could do a Priest King. Well, Mictlan Priests are not as good. Yeah, they tend to die. So I think you might just do it like Priest King, wait 2 turns, do another Priest King, until you have an expansion party, and just totally stash away money to get this first fort, because the timing of that first fort is freaking huge. It's so big. You don't want it to limit your expansion parties, but I think you're okay with it limiting your research. So, could try again, but yeah, you definitely want to also have a temple in this fort when it comes up for the first time. But I think once you're able to double your Jag production, and then you have another one, and then you're able to like quadruple it, you'll be in good shape. This is, I think, the kind of build that will shine as you get larger masses of sacreds. And yeah, I think that's about it. At some point, you also are going to obviously switch from making Jags in your capital to other things like Rain Warriors. This is pretty good on Rain Warriors, too. Poison Resistance and Blood Bond, they should be pretty efficient at expanding underwater. Like 15 of these guys, I don't think they'll take any losses. against a lot of things. Like things which normally, like this, would normally kind of scare the shit out of you if you were marching them into it with my other build, because they're going to get poison, it's going to go through it, they're all going to die. Yeah, I think they do just fine versus that. So, anyway, I think this is probably a better build. Not totally sure, but anyway, that's kind of my final closing thoughts on the nation. So, take care, guys.